I'm here to be a strong support for the Violence Against Women Act, and I hope that this bill passes, and I hope that this bill passes today. It is because the Senator Leahy has worked on a bipartisan basis in his committee to bring this bill out. This bill was first passed in 1994 under the leadership of our Vice President, then Senator Joe Biden, well known for a strong, muscular, robust approach to law enforcement. And what he saw was that so many of the victims of crime were women, and that they were victims both in streets and neighborhoods. They were also terrible victims in their own home, where they were battered and abused, and then found that when they came to the judicial system, that they were battered again because they were ignored and had no one to stick up for them and were always told, "Oh, it's your fault, what are you doing?" Biden changed the law, and we worked on a bipartisan basis. Ever since 1994, we have continually reauthorized this legislation, looking at new needs and new technology and new creative ways of responding to these needs for prevention, intervention, and even prosecution. What we want to do today is pass this legislation that's been refreshed, reformed, and also brings some new approaches to this. The chairman of the committee has done an outstanding job and is to be commended. Violence Against Women Act authorizes 2 federal programs for domestic and sexual violence in our communities: the Department of Justice and the Department of Human Services. The STOP Grants is the largest national grant program in the Justice Department. Roughly half of all violence against women funds go to these STOP grants, and they go to every community. And what is it they do? They coordinate community approaches to end violence and sexual assault. They fund victim services like shelters and the toll-free crisis hotline. And they fund legal assistance to victims to be able to get court orders, to be able to protect themselves from the abuser or from the stalker. That also includes training for police officers, prosecutors, and judges so they know how to do a good job. Victims of child abuse grants, something that I'm very familiar with, having been a child abuse social worker, and also important services in terms of rape prevention programs. This is a great bill, and it meets a compelling human need. Since the original Biden legislation, over 1 million women have called that hotline, who were desperate, who were fearful for their life. And when they called that number, they didn't get a busy signal. They didn't get hung up on. They got help, and I know that it saved lives. 1 in 4 women will be victims of domestic violence during her lifetime. 1 in 4. 16 million children are exposed to domestic violence. And with also 1 in 6 women have experienced attempted or completed rape. And even men now are the subject of rape. But 25% of rape crisis centers have waiting lists for advocacy groups. And I'm going to talk about that in more detail. 2 million victims of physical and sexual violence each year, 20,000 in Maryland. On the average, 1,000 female victims are killed by their abusers. 1/3 of all female homicides are domestic violence. Mr. President, these are numbers and statistics, but they also represent real people. We help over 70,000 victims every day, 70,000 victims every day through hotlines and services and shelters. But regrettably, there is a waiting list. So we need to pass this legislation because it gives us the authorization to be able to do so. It meets these compelling human needs to protect people. And in my own state, it's had enormous positive consequences. There's something that was developed through the Department of Justice called the Lethal Index. It means that when a police officer goes into a home, he has to, or she has to assess, how dangerous is it? Do you yank the kids out, take the abuser and put them in jail? Or do you call in a social worker to try to intervene, give the family more time, give the family counseling so that we can get people off the ledge, out of a violent situation, but be able to work on the long path for family stability? Well, my local law enforcement police officers tell me this lethal checklist has been a tremendous tool to being able to assess the level of index, the level of violence when they are in that home. They know then when people are in danger and they have to get them out right that minute. They also know when there's the opportunity for other interventions, again, to be able to help the family. This helps families, it helps police officers, and it helps our community. We need to empower victims to be able to help themselves by providing help in these abusive relationships. Studies show that victims who use community-based domestic violence services, when they are available, really are almost never victims of murder or attempted murder. That's a powerful line, that if we have this intervention and prevention, we can not only reduce violence, but we can reduce homicides as well. We need to pass this bill because it is crucial to our families, to our communities, and it shows the country also that we are serious about governing and keep legislation going. I want to also comment on some of the important programs, as I said. And I'm going to talk a little bit about my role. Mr. President, I'm an appropriator, and in fact, I'll leave shortly to go to a markup. But I have moved the Commerce, Justice, Science spending bill. And I worked so closely with the gentlelady from Texas, Senator Kay Bailey Hutchinson. Again, a very strong advocate in the interest of women, both in protecting and helping them both here and around the world. Working on a bipartisan basis, in this year's bill, we put money in the federal checkbook for those STOP grants, for those sexual assault services, for that transitional housing grants, and also for other help in our community. We also took a serious look at the whole issue of forensics. Forensics is a subject of much debate and, unfortunately, much backlog. In my bill, in the Commerce, Justice, Science bill, we funded overall in the Department of Justice money to deal with forensic backlogs. But we also pay particular attention to something called the Debbie Smith Act. Now, let me just say this. There are two different bills. There's the Violence Against Women, and there's the Debbie Smith Act. The Debbie Smith Act was passed because of a woman named Debbie Smith who was subjected to the most vile, repugnant, despicable acts of violence against her. What we do working here is that we've actually put money in the federal checkbook to reduce the backlog of DNA evidence. It ensures that a high percentage of the funds also go to labs to be able to deal with samples from crime scenes, the databases, and others. If we do debate this rape kit issue at a later time, I want to thank Senator Leahy for his advocacy and Senator Cornyn for his sensitivity and wanting to solve the problem. I believe if we take a minute and we keep in our mind and as our legislative goal that we work together, not who gets credit, but who gets help. It's not about who gets credit, it's about who gets help. We want to be able to help those rape victims have the solace and the consolation that their government is on their side, using the best of scientific evidence to make sure that we have the right person and have the right prosecution to get the right conviction. And right now there is a backlog. When justice gives out their money for forensics, it doesn't always go on these issues. We can direct it, we can do a good job. Let's really come together. Let's iron out our parliamentary differences so we can pass this very important Violence Against Women I can take what I've done to put money in the federal checkbook. Let's refresh the federal law book. And most of all, let's keep our eyes on what we want to do. We want to be able to prevent domestic violence and violence against women, whether it's the stranger who perpetrates danger and despicable acts or in their own home. Prevention, intervention, training of police officers, judges, and courts, and the right prosecutions. Mr. Chairman, I yield the floor.